He wrote a publication called the Illinois Monthly Magazine. It was published in Vandalia when Vandalia was the state capital. Tom Higgins ended up living over in Vandalia. He lived straight north of town on US Route 51 up where the prison grounds are. If you're familiar with that area, there's a warden's home up there. Up in front of the warden's home, there's a big monument there, and it says, "To the memory of the old ranger Tom Higgins." Tom Higgins lived on that very site. That was his family farm. He passed away and is buried up there. He died about 1836, and he is buried on that site up there. One funny thing about him, they always called him, whenever you hear about him or read about him in any of the history books, they always call him Old Tom Higgins. Old Tom Higgins was only 36 years old when he passed away. So he was like an 18-year-old kid when this battle took place. But I mean, he was cut up, scarred up. Medicine wasn't at all what we have today. I mean, this guy had to be one scary looking man coming down the streets. He was involved, he did, like I say, live to tell the story. He was involved in a number of lawsuits where he would get into a fight with people and beat them up, tear up their clothes or whatever. He went up to the Galena lead mine country when they were opening the lead mines up in the Galena area. He got up there, he got into a duel with a man up there. The weapons they chose for the duel was rocks. They stood these guys like 20 feet apart, gave them each a pile of rocks, and they threw rocks at each other until one of them would perish, literally. So Tom was quite a character. They had just north of the State House in Vandalia an area called the Bullpen. And whenever court was in session or the State House was in session, people would come to town for entertainment, and there'd be fights and so forth, and people would place bets on the fights. Tom Higgins was always one of the fighters that everybody would bet on when they put him in the bullpen to fight with the other combatants that day. So he was quite a local character. After the War of 1812, after this took place, after the Battle of Hills Fort of 1814, that was the last Indian attack that would take place here in the state of Illinois during the War of 1812. Now, we didn't know it at the time. A number of our residents that lived here, I mentioned the Lindley family fort out here, they were there the night of the battle. A couple of the kids lived to tell the story, and this one young lady, Lydia, can't think of her name, she was one of the Lindleys. Anyway, one of the Lindleys that lived out there in the fort was a little girl. She witnessed this whole battle take place. Her parents were afraid that their family was very greatly at risk living in this small family fort. They moved back to Madison County. Billy Jones, who owned the Jones Fort, was a Baptist minister. He did the same thing. He moved back to Madison County. They weren't going to live out here on this frontier with the thought of Indian attacks taking place at any time, not knowing that the Battle of Hills Fort would be the last one. There were a number of attacks like this that would happen around some of these family forts. The Indians that did commit the attacks committed it more like an act of terrorism. They were trying to scare off the settlers, and they were being paid by the British to do it. You've heard of being scalped. That's where they'd take a scalp off the top of the head. That happened, that came into being during the War of 1812. What they would do is the Indians would scalp someone, and they would turn that in for a bounty to Henry the Hair Buyer Hamilton up at Fort Detroit, which was a British fort located where Detroit, Michigan is today. So the British were paying a bounty for American scalps. It's rather odd when you think about it, because the British have long time, ever since the War of 1812, the British have been our strongest ally in any battle, World War I, World War II, anything else, up through the current conflicts today. The Americans and the British fought side by side for every battle since then. But through the American Revolution, through the War of 1812, they were the ones we were fighting against at that time.